Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Hard Things Podcast. This is your host, Blaine Burgess. Today, we have episode 86, and it will be called The Triune of Life. Last time, we began a series of the book of John from the Bible. Some stories I was inspired by, and we talked about Jesus' first miracle, turning water into wine. We talked about his I am statement, I am the true vine. And so, to me, kind of start at the beginning of his miracles and the end of his I am statements. So we're going to kind of work toward the middle a little bit. So Jesus' second miracle was healing the official's son, the Roman official's son. And his second to last I am statement, also during the Passover dinner, was I am the way, the truth, and the life. So these happen in the book of John, about 10 chapters apart. So on the surface, doesn't maybe seem like there's a lot to unpack here, but I paired these two together because the Romans, the Greeks, basically everyone who wasn't Jewish at the time had many gods. They were worshiping kind of individual aspects of God through these other deities. And I think Judaism and Christianity got it right that you can't separate aspects of God. And I think we as humans almost instinctively and very intelligently, like, we're like, hey, I want to be like Jesus, but when it comes time to sacrifice, we don't have to go and be crucified on the cross, but sometimes it kind of feels that way. The sacrifices can be painful, but to avoid the painful sacrifice, we rationalize. We say like, oh, well, God doesn't want pain and suffering for me. And sometimes a little pain and suffering, sacrifice is necessary to, kind of bring about the greater good. It's not convenient. There's nothing really convenient about, God's perspective. But if we share in that perspective in totality, we don't pick and choose. Again, we don't have lesser gods. I think ultimately we can see the fruits of that. Like, you gotta kind of trust that sacrifice leads to something, but the trust comes first, for sure. So Jesus healing the official's son. Basically he comes to Jesus, says, my son's dying, can you come to my house and heal him? And Jesus basically goes like, hey, you want signs and everything, and that's cool, but like, your faith should be your faith, no matter what. And he just kind of gets frustrated, but then he says like, go, your son lives. So he didn't visit him. There's no ritual. It was genuinely, not impressive. I mean, aside from the fact that the kid was healed from a distance, but there was no pomp and circumstance around it. And the official goes home, and his son recovered basically the exact moment Jesus said the words. So, trusting the spoken word at a distance. And obviously, Jesus lived 2,000 years ago. And in our present world, there is a lot of evil and darkness kind of going on. And it can be extremely hard to trust a spoken word at a distance, and not only physical distance across the earth from where this happened, but also just across time. But no matter what, no matter how far we are from, the Middle East, or how far we are from that point in time, the same words are true. He says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. So I think again, back to like the lesser gods, we kind of divide God into acceptable, smaller, imagine like taking one giant submarine sandwich and cutting it into a bunch of small pieces. It's a little bit more digestible, and you can actually fit it in your mouth to chew it. But at the end of the day, you got to eat that whole sandwich. You got to try to do it all in one sitting. And I mean, that's tough. If one sitting counts as 35 years of a whole man's life, I think maybe I've gotten close to the end of the sandwich at this point. But you can't go to the sandwich and take the pickles out, or the mustard, or the cheese, or like at this point, like it's toasted, so everything's melted together. And as much as we like to control or try to say that something's not a part of divinity, the truth is the truth. The reality is the way it is. And if you want to access kind of the highest version of our reality, it's through Jesus. So Jesus is the human embodiment of God. And what it's saying is you have to unify all of these aspects of divinity, and Jesus is like our way to understand, like, okay, here was this guy. He was the closest thing to God you could be as a human. So we got to try to be as close to him to get close to God. And the only way through it is, through him. And I think people sometimes can take it literally, or, I mean, honestly, the mental gymnastics that I've done in my lifetime, and I'm not even the best mental gymnast. I know some mental gymnasts out there that are, they're just Olympic level. I'm just like a high school gymnast when it comes to my mentality. Maybe collegiate, I don't know. I'm like a, Libby Dunn type mental gymnast, at least I was kind of popular, even if I didn't go to the Olympics. But it's just so hard to eat the whole sandwich. It's easier if you can eat the whole sandwich with somebody, but you have to have your own separate sandwich. And man, it is a lot. And you have to kind of like, it's almost like I always think of the Harry Potter thing where they're trying to get the amulet in the cave with Dumbledore. And they have to like do all this stuff and go kind of to a place where it looks like the underworld, and you're drinking the water, and the water's kind of endless, and the water's poisoning you in your mind. And he basically told Harry, like, you have to make me drink it all, no matter what. But then he gets to the amulet, and then you can't even kill it with normal magic. You gotta use whatever, the sword or the snake tooth or whatever. And I mean, it's just like the layers under which evil like hides itself just push you to your absolute limit. But you have to force yourself, and you have to force others to drink all that water. And it is not tasty. The sandwich is pretty tasty, but I feel like there's just like something, maybe some spinach on it. Just spinach, kind of like raw spinach. It's a little bit nasty, leaves a weird film on your tongue. I feel like spinach doesn't want us to eat it. But anyways, so the thing that I love, I kind of came to the story watching The Chosen, and the show kind of takes some creative liberties because the gospel is kind of straightforward. In The Chosen, the Roman official is the embodiment of someone who worships like Roman gods, and he's second in command kind of at the beginning of the show. He's a friend of Matthew, the tax collector, kind of protects him at first, but then over time, it kind of, changes his heart a little bit, and he gets into the Hebrew God. And turns out he has some sin. He had a servant who he had a child with, and this child was a servant boy, and the servant mother died, maybe in childbirth or whatever it is. But they kind of changed the narrative a little bit. So this kid was sick, and they called him servant boy, but he basically was like best friends with the guy's other son from his marriage. And so he's sick, and it's like a burden to the family, and he's kind of bearing it. And the wife knows that this kid is, the servant's son with the Roman official, Gaius. And you can just see over multiple seasons, Gaius just kind of changes based on what he sees from Jesus, based on his relationship with Matthew and Simon Peter. And then he struggles with worth. He's like, am I worthy for Jesus to heal my son? I've seen him heal so many people. Will he heal my son? And he goes to Jesus, and it changes the tune a little bit. He more so than asking for a sign or whatever, he's like, hey, I'm not worthy, but I'm here. And basically Jesus goes like, dude, your faith is out of control. You're more faithful than most of the Jews. So he just like, dude, yeah, your son's healed. I don't have to go to have it done, and he goes, and his son's healed, and eventually he takes over as the leader. I think he maybe took over as leader of the city by then. And there's this like tent city of people who came and were like causing trouble, but not really, just like semi-dangerous, kind of the rule of law and order. Like Rome would typically stomp it out and scatter the people. But Jesus's example kind of led this official to do some good and kind of allow those people to stay and support the worship or whatever. So yeah, it's just kind of a cool thing to see this Romans transformation. But these ultimately, I paired these two because he had, like, basically when he comes home and the servant boy is better, he comes in and he like blows out the candles on the altars of like the Roman gods. And the kid, is better. And his wife, it kind of like heals the family, right? So the wife knows that he was unfaithful, but this kid has become a joy to them, now he's better. So they're just thankful, like, hey, we're all healthy in here. And yeah, it's just a cool thing. A little transformation goes to show you that, you can kind of stray from the path or be brought up in a different system. And it's all about like feeling it out and seeing the miracles and believing, even when it may be not in style. I mean, definitely for a Roman official, was not in style for him to do that at the time. And even though the kid was born of like sin. The kid was healed, and guy's request was honored, regardless of what he did. So there wasn't punishment for sin. It was like, hey, let's take this sin and make the best of it. And ultimately, that's what happened in the show. So I appreciated the representation of that. And just a good story, a way too to kind of dress up the Bible and like not change the original message, but almost like just make it more relatable to today. Because I think there's a lot of unfaithfulness in relationships, but children are good, sickness sucks, and for that child to be healthy and for everyone to kind of be on board to take care of them and keep it moving, and for the official to ultimately do good to the people looking to learn from Jesus who are living in Tent City. It's very, very good stuff. So practicality, the takeaway here. The official at first saying, I'll believe it when I see it work. I need results before I commit. I need an investment, a particular investment before I give in. And really, ultimately, it's like the love for the son and the will to be better and do better, the will to do the right thing outside of those circumstances, like the rest in life. I think you just get to a point in suffering where you become willing to do better, and the suffering almost like purifies you of any malcontent, and realizing that events that have happened. Maybe I didn't grow up with this faith. Maybe whatever happens. But you realize that faith is inevitable if you want joy in your life. Like, you got to have some faith. You got to trust something. And I think what's great, what I've experienced is, the paths I've taken in my life, I've been blessed and hurt by my decisions and things kind of outside my control. And the good and the bad are, I've said it before on this podcast, inevitable, I think. It's about 50-50. But if you've had more bad in your life recently or overall, and you're counting the beans, and there's more bad beans in there, you're throwing out rotten beans, moldy beans, whatever, and you just have to believe in that 50-50. And so if more bad has happened to you already, that just means that it's clearing the way for good now. That equation is going to balance itself if you let it. So that's the thing. You have to be willing. You have to be open. You have to let it. The Roman official had suffered to that point, and Jesus was able to balance the equation, but the Roman official just had to be willing. Like, hey, your God could be the one God, and I'm here. I trust it. And then the miracles happen, and miracles aren't guaranteed. But the only way a miracle can happen is if you're willing and you're open to it. If you don't think it's possible, then it won't be, and you won't participate, and you'll kind of opt out of life. And opting out of life is death. It's literally the definition of death. So this is back to the old episodes, 20 minutes cooking. So the moral here is trust comes first, alignment follows, and the outcome shows up if it's God's will. If it's a plan, there's a plan greater than ours. And you've got to trust it. And it's not to say that if a bunch of goods happen in your life that something automatically bad's going to happen, but it's kind of like heavy is the head that wears the crown. If you have a bunch of good things in your life, I think what you have to do is share those blessings with other people, and sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones that feel like they're owed something, or people that haven't received the blessings yet, or people that haven't opened themselves up to it. They're not willing yet. I think our work is to use our blessings to bless others, and kind of open them up to be willing to receive their own blessings. And the more people that open up and allow for that divinity to flow through them, the better that this world's going to be. But in a way, I think what I've struggled with is it feels like you're risking your blessings, like you're going to lose something. And you do. You kind of lose a little piece of you every time, you try to help someone and it doesn't, they don't kind of take you up on it. It is a little bit tragic in a way, but, until death, the story's not over. So there's always a chance. As long as someone's alive, there's always a chance for redemption. So I think over time I've gotten better at handling when, you try to open someone up to the blessings of life and they just like aren't ready to receive yet, and you don't want to see someone suffer. I think that's the thing that gets me is I know not being open is a place of suffering because I've been there. So, I'm someone that doesn't like to see someone suffer, but it also is part of God's plan. It's part of the bargain, You will just suffer until you open yourself up. And the big thing I've always the big thing I realized probably, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago was you just have to, go through things yourself and transmute that poison. If you get poisoned, soured by life, maybe take a big bite of spinach. You gotta just eat it, metabolize it, but then invite others to join with you and eat their own sandwich next to you. And that is a great thing. It's really the best that life has to offer, and honestly, it's not a bad bargain. If we could just change life to be the way we want it to be, if there was nothing bad that ever happened, then the goodness wouldn't be as sweet as it is. So just have to accept and stay open somehow, which is hard to do. But unless people commit to that, no matter how hard it gets, it's just not possible. If everyone kind of shuts down, then the human race dies. And I think part of our survival, it's weird, we shield ourselves from divinity. We also know that it's the source of our power and that we need to open ourselves to continue on. So it's this weird dance of life and death that it's going to continue on, I think. So anyways, that's enough of me talking for today. Until next time, this has been Blaine. See y'all later.